Hello and welcome to a new video tutorial on YouTube channel of tutorialspedia.com. This video tutorial is part of a series of video tutorials covering different topics related to TIBCO BusinessWorks 6.x. In this tutorial, I will talk about how to implement secure web services in TIBCO BW6. I'll be implementing first one-way SSL based web service, and then I will be implementing mutual or two-way SSL based web service in BW6. Here is a brief of the details that we are going to cover in this video tutorial. For the sake of simplicity, I will be implementing a very basic type of REST web service without much of the implementation inside the TIBCO BW6 process. As the purpose of this video tutorial is to focus on the security and the SSL based configurations and not on the actual implementation of the processes. I will implement the RESTful web service first with one-way SSL, where I will explain to you how we configure HTTP resource, how we configure SSL server resource, and use that for the implementation of one-way SSL based REST web service. And then I will implement and extend the same web service with mutual or two-way SSL. Please note that I'm using self-signed certificates and I have generated key stores locally, and if you are not clear how to generate your own key stores and self-signed certificates, I'll put the link in the description box how you can use Java Keytool to generate self-signed certificates and key stores, how you can use OpenSSL, and how you can use Particle, which is a graphical tool. And last but not least, we will be testing the implemented services. For that purpose, you can use any of the client. I will use SOAP UI as a client to test the web services, both one-way and two-way SSL. So without further ado, let's directly jump into the implementation part using Business Studio. I have already opened TIBCO Business Studio. I'm going to create a new project. I'll click on File, I'll choose New, and I'll choose Project. And here from the BusinessWorks, I will choose BusinessWorks Application, and I'll click Next. Here we need to give a name to the project. Let's name it as SSL Server Dash Services, and it will create a module as well, an application module with the same name with .module extension. I'll click on next, and I'm not going to change anything in the folder structure, and I'll keep the things as is and just click on finish. So as soon as you click finish, you will see that your project will get created and you will be able to see your project in the project explorer. So once the project gets created, by default it adds a process with the name process.bwp, and right now since there is nothing implemented in this process, so it's showing it as an error. Okay, in order to create the RESTful web service, we have two options. One option is to right click on the module and choose new, and then you can add from here BusinessWorks REST resource. But another option is that since we already have the process created, so if you go to this process and from the advanced you change the mode to stateless, then you see that you get an option here to create a REST service. So you can create a REST service from this process. I'll just click on this, and now here I will give the required details. So the resource name I'm going to use is user, so it creates a resource service part with /user. And from the operations, I'm going to select only get. I don't want to use any other operations, and I'll just click next. And here I have to specify the response. So in the response, by default it has one string with the name item. I will rename it to message, and I'll just click finish. Okay, so it asks me to save the details that I have made, and you can see that the process has been updated, and now this get resource has been added. And here it has added an activity which is a reply activity with the name get out, and here we have to specify what response we want to return. So in the message, I'm going to just hard code some message. Welcome to user service. I'm just hard coding a message, and that's the simplest possible web service implementation for a RESTful web service. You can see how easy it is and how quick and efficient TIBCO BW6 is in providing us options to implement a RESTful web service. Of course, in real scenarios, you will have many activities and transitions and business logic implemented in the process, but that's not the scope of this tutorial. In this tutorial, our focus is on how to implement the service with a one-way and two-way SSL. So we will be more focused on the SSL things instead of the implementation. All right. So now if you see, we have the process created, but by default, this process which got created, it will have a connection already added. So here you can see under the resources, we have the connection. And by default, this will be an HTTP connection. And that means that this service is yet not secure. You can see the host bw.host.name and the port is 8080. So what I'm going to do, I want to use just a, instead of using the module property, I want to use just the literal value for the simplicity. So I will make it localhost. And for the port, I have to change it to some available port. I will use 8075. So this is the port which I know available on my system. So I will use this 8075 port. After that, I want to change this web service so that it becomes secure. So for security, first I will implement one-way SSL and then I will proceed with two-way SSL. So if we want to implement SSL, we will have to go to this security option and we will have to check this confidentiality. So as soon as you click on the checkbox of confidentiality, you see an option for SSL server configuration. From here, the actual changes that we need for SSL of our web service start. For this scenario or for this web service, I have already created some key stores and certificates which I will use, and I created those before this video so that I save some time. So let me show you the certificates that I have created. Since it's going to be a server and we will be using two-way SSL and we need for that store on the client side as well. So what I have done is that I have created a key store which is going to be the server key store, and you can see that it is server keystore.jks, and I extracted public certificate from this key store in P7B format. If you want to know exactly how to create key stores and how to extract the public certificate out of it, as I stated before, I have already I will put the link in the description box where I have explained how we can use Java Keytool, how we can use OpenSSL, or how we can use Particle graphical tool to perform all these type of self-signed certificates and key stores creation and exporting and importing of the certificates. So this key store, let me open this key store for you in the Particle, and you can see it that what exactly it is. So I have to provide the password, and you can see it has server keys. So this is the key store, and it has the certificate which I created, and I already exported the public certificate out of it. Why I exported public certificate? Because this public certificate will be needed on the client side for the client to consume this web service in case of two-way SSL. This is the one thing. Second thing is I created client side store as well, which will be from which I already exported client's public certificate as well. So if I open client key store with the password, you will see that it has its own key. And you see here server keys. This one I already imported on the client side, and this is actually the public certificate of the server. So this public certificate of the server, this one I have already imported into the key store of the client. So now from my side, key store on the server and key store on the client side are ready, so they can communicate with each other. So let me go back to this business studio, and I'm going to create SSL server configuration. I'll click here and I'll choose create shared resource. So it will create me SSL server resource. I'll not rename it. I'll keep the same name and I'll just click on the finish button. And now inside this SSL server, I will have to do the necessary configuration. For this, it needs identity store provider. So here we will be providing the server key store. I'll click here and I'll create a new shared resource, and it's called key store provider resource. So here in this key store provider resource, basically we will be providing all the details of the server key store. I'll click, without changing the name, I'll click on finish. And now here we will provide the alias and here we will provide the password. So what's the alias and what's the password for the server key store? We already saw here. Let me open it again for you. Okay, So I will open the server Keystore JKS file. You can see its alias is server keys. So I will add the alias and I'll provide the password. Okay, right now I want to do one-way SSL, so I'm not gonna click on this enable mutual authentication and I'll click save. But since we selected this identity resource but we did not configure it, so I'll click on this identity resource, and here I will need to provide the key store details. So I'll click on this search option, and from the file system I'll choose the key store. So I'll click on browse file system, and here I will choose Keystore. I'll change the type to JKS and I will select server Keystore. Click OK and I will provide the password. Okay, and here the type and refresh interval, we will keep it as is. We will not change any of these. Now I will go back to this Keystore provider and just verify everything. And now you can see that we have configured the HTTP resource shared resource on the server side with the SSL server resource, and within SSL server resource we are referring to the key store, and we have already specified the details inside the key store by providing the JKS along with its password. So in this way what we have done is that we have successfully configured everything on the server side for one-way SSL based web service. So in case of one-way SSL, server does not care who is the client. It's the client who makes sure that it's connected and it's communicating with the actual server with a valid server. So that means that server does not need any certificate of the client, and for that purpose whenever client will have to communicate with this, client will not need to provide its certificate to the server. This means that in this first scenario of one-way SSL, when we will be calling this service, client will not need to provide its identity or its keys. So let's now go to the process and verify that everything, we can see that there is nothing in error. So what we can do is that we can load this web service now, and we run this service. We can run it in debug or we can run in the actual run mode, and we can test it. So let's run this service. It will take a bit of time loading into the engine, and once it's running and we can see in the console, once it's running then we will be able to test it. So our service is now running. We can go to the client. You can use any of the client in order to invoke this service. You can use even just a browser to access this service with one-way SSL. For me, I will use this SOAP UI. I will select HTTPS localhost colon 8075 because this is the port we selected /user, and I'll click on OK. Right now, in the preferences, I don't want to select any certificate because I want to simulate one-way SSL without any identity or the key store on the client side, and it should still return us a valid response. So if I try this, you can see that I received a response, welcome to user service. So this is how we are able to access a one-way SSL based RESTful web service implemented in TIBCO BW6 from a client, in which case server does not care who is the client, and on the client side the client doesn't need to provide its identity, but on the server side we have to configure SSL resource, we have to configure key store, and we have to accordingly change our HTTP connection. So this is one part of this tutorial where we configured one-way SSL. Now I want to show you how we can we can manipulate and change the same service and make it with to work with two-way SSL. So for two-way SSL, I will go to this SSL service resource, and here we have an option enable mutual authentication. I will click on this, and as soon as you click on this, you see you have option client authentication type and key store provider as TrustStore. So let me choose this key store provider as TrustStore. Here I will choose it to make it R type as required, and key store provider as TrustStore. This TrustStore basically will be containing the public certificate of the client. because now with two-way SSL server also make sure that it's communicating and connecting to a valid client. So both parties now need to authenticate each other, and only then this SSL handshake will happen. So here we need to now select the Keystore, the TrustStore. For that purpose, I will choose this create shared resource, and let me change the name to TrustStore, and I'll click on finish. And now I will click on this, and here what I'm basically doing is that I'm using the default TIBCO GRE provides us CS certs key store, trust store, which already contains and is bundled with the certificates of all the major certification authorities. So if you want to authenticate, or if you want to add to a trusted certificate list any of your client, you can simply add the certificate of that client to the same CS certs store. So I already added in the CS certs public certificate of the client, and I provided the password, and I'm in a position to use this CS certs directly. I want to show you exactly by opening the CS certs that I have already imported the client certificate. So if I open this, sorry, I put the wrong password. Okay, so you can see it has so many certificates added for the CAs, and here you can see CL. This CL is the certificate of my client, which I had imported previously here in the client client side store. So here we have cl.jks, which I created for the client side, and then I exported a public certificate out of this client's JKS, and then I imported this CL into the trusted cscerts.jks, which is bundled with the JRE. So I'm going to use this. It's not necessary that you use this one. You can create your own trust store JKS and then import into that JKS as well this public certificate and start using that. But for the sake of convenience, my own convenience and simplicity, I'm using this one. Okay, so now what happens is that, okay, let me fix something here. Now what happens is that in our case previously, our client was sending requests from the SOAP UI, and we were able to get the response with one-way SSL. But now on the server side, since we have already implemented two-way SSL, now if I load this project again and if I try to access this from the client side directly, client will not be able to access this service. So let's run this project and see the behavior and then make the necessary changes on the client side to enable client to access this service with mutual SSL enforced. Okay, so the project is running. Now I can go to the SOAP UI and try to access the service. I should get an error. You can see we got the error remote host closed the connection during the handshake. This is because that we have already configured two-way or mutual SSL on the server side, but on the client side we have to provide its certificate. Only then it will be able to communicate with the server. For that purpose, in case of SOAP UI, of course, in different clients the methods can be different, but in case of SOAP UI, you will have to go to preferences, you will have to go to SSL settings, and here you will have to provide the client key store. So client key store is cl.jks. In my case, I'll have to provide the password and I'll click on OK. Now if I try to access the service, this two-way SSL based service, you can see that we are receiving the response successfully. So in this way, we are able to access over two-way SSL based BW web service directly from the client by providing the certificates and configuring everything as required. So that's it from this video tutorial covering one-way SSL and two-way SSL implementation in TIBCO BW6. I hope that the information will be helpful for you, and if you have any questions or any ambiguity or you need further clarification, feel free to write in the comments section. And for further readings, you can always refer to my blogs on tutorialspedia.com, and also you can refer to the BW6 tutorials playlist on my YouTube channel. And last but not least, you can always refer to the official documentation from TIBCO, which is undoubtedly the best available resource about TIBCO products over the internet. And at the end, I would request you to please don't forget to subscribe to the channel so that you are able to get latest videos as and when uploaded into the channel. Thank you very much.